All right. So, Joe, thank you so much for joining this one of the few podcast which I have started within the space of the life science. I would like to first of all express my sincere gratitude for giving me the opportunity to join as a guest here, as well as me is very looking forward to your to for this particular discussion, so that we can exchange and understand your thoughts around the real world. So first of all, Joe, it would be great if you can, a little bit, highlights about your professional journey, how you have end up with this real world evidence and healthcare research and all.
Sure, absolutely. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate you extending the offer. So, I started my real world evidence journey probably during my master's in public health degree, where I started doing health services research. And then I always wanted to be in healthcare and potentially work as like a hospital administrator. And then I realized that I preferred research far more than I did the operations of healthcare. So I opted to pursue a PhD in health services research, where I studied primarily mental health and behavioral health services, sort of from like a broad perspective and from a public health perspective, I should say, but also from like a direct to patient and more healthcare focused way. And then I was fortunate enough to do a postdoc at the University of Pennsylvania in their Center for Mental Health Research. And in that postdoc, I was actually located with a Medicaid managed care organization. So I was able to access both the Medicaid data and the county public health data and marry those data sets together in order to conduct some research around opioids and benzodiazepines, as well as some suicide prevention programs. And following that, I opted to leave academia, where I ended up going to what was then HealthCore. I started as a senior researcher, and HealthCore then became Carelon Research with a rebrand. While I was there, I was leading studies and overseeing teams, and I sort of worked my way up to working more on initiatives and strategies. And in May of 2024, I moved over to Inspire, which is a large social network for peer support for patients and caregivers. And there I have started on the sales team actually as sort of like the subject matter expert. And then I recently moved positions a little bit, still within the sales team, but more towards solutions architecture and overall go-to-market strategy. And throughout this journey, I've started all the way from doing my own analysis and coming up with my own hypothesis, all the way through trying to help other people and like our pharma clients trying to develop their hypotheses, objectives, and then determining the right methodology that would help them.
Yeah, that's so great, Joe, because you have transformed your journey from on the ground projects to your go to market and then solutions to leadership. So I think it's very great to see and to your journey in the professional world. So yeah, so Job, I when we worked, on the real world evidence side and healthcare economic side, a lot of times this question comes, and because of like a lot of times, this particular questions have got multiple interpretations as well.
Mhm.
So I would like to understand the what is the correct interpretation of real world evidence and healthcare economics and outcome research, none other than from your expert itself.
Sure, yeah. So I like to think of real world evidence is taking all of the information that is produced in the normal course of care, plus or minus some surveys or contacting patients for their observations, and using that data to answer research questions about products, about services, and about the patient experience. And I think within that, what I mean by like the data that's generated, it includes real world data, which is like EHRs or electronic medical records, claims data, pharmacy data. It could also include things like wearables, PROs, patient surveys, even patient interviews, anything that helps us better understand how care was delivered in an observational capacity. So,
Okay.
for example, like a trial where you're doing an intervention would not be considered RWE because you're actually intervening to administer some sort of care for that purpose of the study, whereas real world evidence is just using what's already being done and then looking to see what happens from that data.
Okay, yeah, yeah, that's so great to hear your thoughts on the real world evidence. Just wanted to hear your thoughts, like, what do you think, like, over the years, how real world evidence is going to evolve or shape in the healthcare decisions going forward?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think one of the things that real world evidence will do will allow for more decentralized sort of studies that may happen uh, before products actually get to market. And I also think that what the real world evidence will continue to evolve with more sophisticated methods, and we may be able to actually start understanding diseases better and treatments better. We see this with, I think there was a model out of Harvard where they were actually repurposing existing drugs based on available real world data. And
Okay.
so they were seeing, right, like an antibacterial drug may also have some anti tumor effects. And because of that, we could repurpose existing drugs or better understand drug mechanisms to generate the next class of drugs.
Okay, okay. And yeah, so also what we have seen, Joe, like over the years, like impact of generative AI is getting evolved, right? A lot of solutions, these technology companies and even pharmaceutical companies are being encouraging to develop generative AI based solutions. So solutions such as identifying adverse events through clinical notes, doing the document intelligence, clinical literature reviews, all those kind of solutions are like very native where organizations are spending. What's your thought on it? Like how generative AI is going to evolve in the real world evidence shape?
Yeah, that's a great question. I actually this is always one of my like pet peeves. We've all, including you, right? Like in your companies, you have been doing AI way longer than we may have been talking about AI. Because, right, if we go back to the actual like what AI is, it's machine learning. It could be other algorithms. Includes things like reinforcement learning, deep learning, neural networks, and then from those neural networks and the better processing power and more data, now we've moved into generative AI. And
Mhm.
I think like the biggest distinction there between like classical AI, which you and I may have practiced more of, and versus the generative AI is that the generative AI is actually using the data to develop new works. Whereas what we were doing, we were using the data to understand that data better and make predictions, but
Mhm.
not necessarily generating new data or insights um, directly.
Okay.
And maybe insights isn't the right word for that there, right? Because we're always generating insights, but it's generating new content.
Yeah, absolutely.
Uh,
Uh, mhm.
and I think
Also,
you asked like how I see it working in RWE.
yeah.
I'm a AI optimist. I've used I have subscriptions to Claude and ChatGPT,
Mhm.
and I've been using both of those. I also have used some AI, generative AI, in my work at Inspire, analyzing the patient forum data.
Mhm.
And I think AI is good and it's helpful. In my experience, at least the untrained foundational models have been pretty hit or miss on giving us the information I want. For example, uh, like I use both of those foundational models often to suss out like what ICD codes I need or
Mhm.
what SNOMED codes I need
Yeah.
or loin codes. And oftentimes it'll give me like the main code. Sometimes it leads me astray and gives me the wrong codes or omits other codes that I would have included. So I think um, I haven't had a chance to use some of the other models like the AI literature review, but even using those foundational models myself with my own engineered prompts, I haven't had I would say, the best luck getting exactly what I would produce as a PhD researcher,
Yeah.
but I think it does offer a lot of shortcuts.
Yeah.
And I still think that there's a lot of human review and intervention by experts like you or me.
Yeah, yeah. Even Joe, like I was talking about document intelligence, right? This is a very nice kind of solutions I have seen, where basically it can help researchers to automate all those kind of literature review. Because whenever researchers used to design any kind of new study, they go through a lot of existing research from different databases like PubMed and all, right?
Mm.
And they go through all those documents and spend a lot of time. So any solution which can automate the process of generating insights, getting the quick summary of those documents, getting the relevant research document also, it can very much helpful for those researchers, right? So do you think those kind of solutions are going to have an edge on the industry?
I think so. I think the applications that will win will be
Mm-hmm.
the ones that are the best tuned and provide the most accurate, factual information on the
Mm-hmm.
first shot. Uh, and I think we're not, I don't know that we're there yet. I don't think it's 100%. I wouldn't want to replace you, for example, with an AI model. Um, Hopefully, no one wants to replace me with one. But I think, right, I think some of those solutions like that are absolutely a great idea. Another use case that I failed to mention was I often use it for error checking, or I use it to help me clarify my message. So I say, like, I might take like a conclusion I have or put an abstract in and say, like, is this abstract clear enough that a layperson could understand it, or that a relatively well-versed scientist but not in this therapeutic area could understand it? And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's been super helpful. And like other tools like Grammarly, for example, like those really simple tools are what I use the most. Um,
Yeah.
and then I would be remiss if I didn't add this one last use case, which is using the generative models to understand a new therapeutic area. I think at the opening of the show, you mentioned how I'm sort of pan therapeutic. I don't have a specialty per se, but and you doing a lot of rare diseases, I don't know them all. There's
Mhm.
like, for example, at Inspire, I'm like, wow, how is there like 3,000 different like diseases and conditions? There's no way any of us could possibly know or remember or understand the treatments, the journey, the symptoms, all of those things that we might be looking for once we go to design our studies. And so I think having a good understanding of like the therapeutic area and the condition that you're researching is
Yeah,
probably gives a huge leg up, right? I don't have to spend hours on PubMed anymore looking for the right review article. I can go to
exactly.
one of these generative models and say, like, what do you think? Or like use WebMD or something like that to summarize for me.
Yeah, absolutely. So coming into the therapeutic areas, Job, over the years, what we have seen, like there are different therapeutic areas such as diabetes, cardiovascular diseases, chronic kidney diseases, even opioid, all those major depressive disorders. All those are like very prominent, therapeutic areas around which, the RW studies are being designed. And recently, I think over the last few years, we have seen like oncologies as well. So, what's your thing? What's your point here? Like, what all the different top therapeutic areas are going to shape this RWE business like projects over the next few years, or currently they are doing it.
I think there's more or less three big buckets.
Mm-hmm.
The first one, I think, as you mentioned, was like oncology, so sort of time limited, but very expensive, very hard to treat disorders. I would classify in there genetic disorders that are treated with cell and gene therapies. I think there's the longer term chronic conditions like heart disease, obesity, chronic kidney disease, things that we don't yet have a cure for, but progress and persist across the lifespan. And then I think the last one is rare diseases,
Yeah.
um, which is There's not as much research on those, and so if you look at a lot of the pharma pipelines, they're increasingly focused on these rare diseases because a lot of the chronic diseases have been sufficiently managed to the
Mm-hmm.
point where people are no longer dying of these conditions.
Mm-hmm.
They're living longer lives, and so I think the rare diseases, despite it being affecting far fewer people, by definition, less than 200,000
Mm-hmm.
or so, um, there's we're doing a much better job of understanding them and then further understanding the relationships between them.
Okay. And also, Joe, we have seen like weight loss drugs have got a lot of attention
Yes.
recently, right? The one of the drug being manufactured by Lilly, I think, has been getting a lot of traction in the market. What do you think? Like the this particular kind of market in weight loss is going to get a lot of attention from different pharmaceutical companies, and how does this going to impact the real world evidence generations?
Yeah, as you mentioned, there's two leading products, one from Lilly, one from Novo Nordisk, and
Mm-hmm.
those products are becoming increasingly widespread, and even more so now that there's compounding pharmacies that were able to produce and sell that under an FDA exception. Those drugs we're finding are actually maybe more useful for other conditions, right? So we're seeing there's some anecdotal evidence that fertility has gone up, that it has had some behavioral health effects like making depression less severe, much like an SSRI. We're seeing that it has cardioprotective effects. Uh, they're also being used in chronic kidney disease, and so I think while obesity might be like the breakthrough sort of designation and indication, I actually think we're going to see more of these drugs that are like omni disease
Mm-hmm.
that can treat multiple diseases with one mechanism. Although we poorly, I think, at this point understand those exact mechanisms of action and the totality of the cascades that happen within the human body.
Okay. Yeah. Absolutely. I think this is something that we need to look forward how these kind of drugs are going to have an impact on different other therapeutic areas also. Okay, all right. So, Job, I have a very interesting or curiosity to see, like, there are different, acts has been done, regulation side,
Mm-hmm.
like IRA has been there for quite a time. So, what do you think, like, the impact of IRA Act in our real world evidence studies and overall R&D for pharmaceutical companies? So, yeah, just wanted to understand from your point.
Yeah, great question. I think the first thing that happened with IRA is that the pharma companies became very conservative in doing new research in their pipelines
Mm-hmm.
and basically hoarding their capital until they had some more clarity on how it would actually impact once it was um, enacted.
Mm-hmm.
We're due here net for the second round of negotiations. I think the first round was probably a little bit painful. The second round, they have a much better idea going into it. I think there'll be some negotiations and back and forth as there was the first time, and then it's a little bit unclear to me what might happen under the next administration under President Trump,
Mm-hmm.
because I think he has expressed some interest in maybe repealing it or backing down from it a little bit. But
Mm-hmm.
I think it remains to be seen. He's a business person by design, and if you're looking at it from a strictly financial perspective, the IRA does some good for the federal government. If you're thinking of the federal government as a business,
Mm-hmm.
and in terms of like how the pharmaceutical companies are adapting to it now or will adapt to it, supposing that it stays in place as is, from many of my conversations with some of the leaders in evidence generation at the pharma companies, they were expressing that perhaps they will shift their pipeline focus to less end of life or later uh, stage diseases, right? That are primarily covered under Medicare. You can think of it like heart failure, chronic kidney disease,
Mm-hmm.
um, myocardial infarction, things that happen later in life, and shift their focus more towards pediatric or early phase or early life disorders.
Okay.
Obesity is one that might cut across both, and so I think there's that, and the reason for that is because while the Medicare is subject to the IRA, right, the commercial payers and
Mm.
Medicaid currently are not. Medicaid has its own sort of cost negotiations that are a little bit different than from that.
Yeah, great. Yeah, that's a great insights. Joe, we are very now clear like how this IRA has an impact on RWE and R&D side for different companies, and how companies are actually designing their existing pipeline, keeping in mind of new leadership change, basis on the past, administration or so. One thing, Job, I would like to understand from you is like a lot of times when we talk to different stakeholders, this comes like they are really looking forward for precision medicine. Like,
Mm-hmm.
so just wanted to understand your thoughts in it, like what exactly the precision medicine and how this is going to have an impact on the patients or the R&D spending as well.
Yeah, precision medicine, as I understand it, is using patients' proteomics, genomics, biomarkers, and really tailoring their treatment to what would be most effective given all of their individual molecular and genetic
Hmm.
composition. Uh, and I think we've seen some of that with like the genetic testing for SSRI or psychotropic medication metabolism. There's a panel that analyzes like a CY or CYP gene,
Mm-hmm.
um, and that has changed the way that providers prescribe medication because they're looking at, okay, if Joe might metabolize this drug really quickly, we might need to give him a lower dose, or maybe that's not the right drug for him. Maybe we need something that he has normal
Mm-hmm.
metabolism of. And so I think in that way, it's really good because you're tailoring the treatment and not giving patients ineffective treatments on the first shot.
Mm-hmm.
On the flip side of that, I think we're new into the space, and even in RWE, we struggle to obtain and collect sufficient amounts of proteomics and genomics data because oftentimes, unless you have like cancer, which needs a biomarker or genomic testing,
Mm-hmm.
there's not a lot of standardized proteomics or genomics right now. And so,
Yeah.
I think some of the providers often use sort of the trial and error to find the right treatment, the way they've done it for the last couple hundred years. And I think that as we get more data and we're able to better create these, really large data lakes and very sophisticated tokenizations where we can actually share data back and forth in a de-identified way, but make sure that we have the right data matched to people. I think with bigger data, we'll get to the point where precision medicine might be part of our normal course of care. I'm hopeful that companies like Google and Amazon, as they
Mm-hmm.
become more invested in healthcare, that they'll actually help us figure out how to best um, store and manipulate the data to make it useful to us researchers. Right. Right now, it's also very specialized. You almost need somebody, or you do actually need somebody that understands genomics in order to understand how to even use it in research. And
Mm-hmm.
not every there's not a lot of people that have that very deep knowledge of genomics or proteomics.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I agree. I agree. Thank you. So, Job, we are at the end of our podcast. These many questions I had listed down to see, like, we can have a clarity, exchange our thoughts, to have a broader understanding on how the market is going to shape up over the years, and what are the different macro level of impact is going to have basis on these new therapeutic areas, leadership change, or any kind of regulation and all. So we I'm going to stop recording here, Joe, and then we can talk afterwards.